I'm Nora Johnston. I'm the director of the Alberta Centre for Active Living. And our forum today is on the topic of motivation, which I think it's a topic that, well, it can lead to lifelong physical activity. And I think it's one of those things that if we could figure out motivation, a lot of our problems would be solved. So I'm looking forward to hearing Wendy's presentation. You can see on the far screen that we have a Twitter chat feed going today. Our handle is @ and then the number 4 active living. And the hashtag that we're going to use today is hashtag PA Forum. If you tweet at least 3 times during the forum, you can pick up a prize at the registration table as you leave. It's on the honor system. We're not going to go through and check and make sure that you actually tweeted that many times, but it's just a way to get you engaged and get the people who weren't able to attend today, get them some of the messaging that we're learning today. We will turn the Twitter feed off during Wendy's presentation. Well, you know, we want people to actually pay attention to you, Wendy. And then we'll turn it back on after her presentation so that you can see what people are saying and have it run through. So based on a recommendation that was submitted last year, in last year's forum evaluation, and yes, we actually do read them, they're not just for fun, what I'd like to do is take a couple of minutes to introduce the Centre for Active Living staff. I'm sure that a number of you have interacted with people over the years through the centre but may not have a face to put to the name, and so we are going to do that today. And to avoid any co-worker rivalry, I'm going to introduce them in alphabetical order. So first up is Don Buchanan. He's at the far back. Oh wow, he's doing arm pump. Don is our communications and marketing coordinator. He edits our words, tweets out our information, and connects us with the media, among other things. Next is Dora Conte. Dora, I think, is at the registration table. Dora is a research assistant and is working with us on the evaluation of Ever Active Schools, Healthy Active School Symposia. Katie Kwolek, where's Katie? She's probably out there too. Katie's our UWalk facilitator. So UWalk is our population-based physical activity initiative. And anything to do with the day-to-day, there's Katie. Anything to do with the day-to-day operation of UWalk, and there's Dora in the blue. Katie's the one. So next is Betty Lee. She's on the far side over there by the window. Betty is officially the center coordinator, but she's really our jack of all trades, and she knows a lot about a lot of things. Christina Leutz is here at the front. Christina is our knowledge translation specialist. Anything to do in the area of making research more understandable, evaluation, reports such as our surveys on physical activity come from Christina's desk. Linda Matthews-Mackey is our administrative assistant. She's the first person you'd see if you actually came to the center, and her main role is to keep us all in line. But she also manages our pedometer loan program, so if you don't know that we have one of those, we do, and you can connect with Linda, and things like our Pinterest account. Roseanne Princeton is in the back with the white, giving us a wave. She's our resource coordinator. If you read the PA Weekly or submit information requests, Roseanne is the person behind those. And last but not least, Jeremy Potter is in the blue at the back. Jeremy's one of our research assistants who's working on our physical activity in the workplace systematic review. I'd also like to introduce our one and only advisory committee person who's here today. We're having an advisory committee meeting Monday in Calgary, so the majority of them are attending the forum in Calgary. But Jill Osler is the chair of our advisory board, and she's joined us here today because of work commitments. She is unable to attend in Calgary, except by phone. Okay, so out of respect to our speaker and the other delegates, if you've got a nice little device, if you can put it on silent, vibrate, so that it's not distracting me, for one, who gets terribly distracted by that stuff, and our speaker and the other people, if you can just make it quiet. That would be good. I understand that people do need to be connected, and if you have to take a phone call, if you can just zip out to do that, that would be great. And since our morning involves a lot of sitting, which we know is not good for us in long blocks of time, and we're not going to have a formal fitness break or a I don't know, we won't get Christina up here doing Pilates or anything for people. I'd suggest that if you'd like to stand, there are some standing tables at the back. Just try and make sure you're not blocking the people in front of you. And we'll also do active applause. So as someone finishes and you'd like to do an applause, if you can stand up, feel free to do that. If you don't feel like doing it, we're not going to point you out. But that way you can legitimately stand up and break that sitting process. So today our speaker is Dr. Wendy Rodgers. Wendy's from the University of Alberta. She's been a professor in the Faculty of Physical Education and Recreation here since 1993, and I do recall when Wendy arrived at the university. She completed her PhD at the University of Waterloo in kinesiology, and she specialized in exercise physiology. Wendy leads a team of researchers who study people's motivation to engage in physical activity for the long term. These studies look at the roles of self-efficacy and self-determination in producing enduring physical activity patterns. With strong collaborations, the research team is examining various factors that influence motivation. And Wendy and her team are interested in supporting adults to adopt and maintain exercise for life, including all the hurdles and lapses that life will throw in their paths. So I'd like to turn the podium over to Wendy. It's active applause.
Thank you. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for inviting me. This is a different approach for me. So normally I do sort of standard academic, heavily theoretical talks, and Nora and her team encouraged me to move away from that, so it's a little point of growth for me, so I'm going to try something a little bit different. So I am going to be talking about theories, but I'm going to try to bury them into some other messaging that you would be more familiar with and may have been exposed to, either as a giver or a receiver, so that will be interesting. I have to acknowledge that the work that I'm going to report here, first of all, is all done by teams, not necessarily just by me. It was also funded by SSHRC, whether they like it or not, which if you're a researcher, you would get, and the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. I am not going to be reporting those standard research, so again, it's buried in there. However, there is evidence to support most of the things that I'm going to say. I think that's all I have to say about that. So I put this slide up. You've probably all seen this slide. I'm putting this slide up because one of my former students, Phil Wilson, spoke at the forum a few years ago, and Phil used this slide. So I thought, why not start where Phil left off? Little shout out to Phil. And so this is basically, hopefully I'm going to get this correct. Do I? Oh, yeah. So some motivation required. This is one kind of motivation, running for your life. And we would argue that maybe that's not the kind we want every day, but it's certainly helpful in the event we have to run away from T-Rex. So my goals for today are basically to talk about what's required to change behavior, the ideas that we can easily identify that associate with behavior, so things we can see that people are thinking and saying about their behavior that might give us a little avenue to go in and use that to change behavior. We're going to get some help from the source of all knowledge and truth, which is the internet. And so I have some sage lay advice that's readily available, and it represents some really common ideas about motivation. I'm also going to use the valuable responses from satirists and cartoonists who I think perhaps capture some of the responses to that sage lay advice that sometimes is in people's insides voices, and the satirists put it in their outside voice, and that's, of course, why they're funny. And I have a number of students in the room, and I'm glad to see you all, but you know that I wreck everything by giving theory-based commentary and interpretation. So the joke seems funny, then I explain it, then it's not funny anymore. So we can look forward to that little highs and lows of emotion as we go through it. I will mention that all of the things that the sage lay advice and the cartoons I have picked off the internet, basically from free sites, openly available sites. They are not mine. I am not taking responsibility for them. I did not write them. Just to be clear about that. I will take responsibility for the commentary and the theoretical interpretations, so that's me. So I'm not trying to say I came up with these jokes. Most of them still have the website right on it from where I took it, because these are places where people are trying to influence behavior and they want you to know that they had that influence. So that's important. So our target behavior, let's be clear. I've put up the physical activity guideline. You will all know this, 150 minutes a week. Basically boils down to 3 50-minute sessions per week, depending on how you interpret that. I'm not going to go on about that. The key part here is for life. So that was in my little intro. We want people to be doing regular exercise for life. And that requires a whole different approach to initiating the behavior, maintaining the behavior, and understanding how our process unfolds as we continue with the behavior. So well-known epidemiologist you probably would have heard of, Stephen Blair. He's the author of the famous fitness and fatness studies, where fatness isn't necessarily related to fitness and fat people can be fit, in his words, has said a lot of times, we know what it takes to make people fit. And anybody in the room who knows me, and possibly others, so I probably am not the only one who's ever said this, let's be honest. We also know people won't do that. So we know that 5%, oh thanks, 5% of Canadian adults engage in enough physical activity. There's another theorist in our area, Tom Baranowski, who has attested that interventions are notoriously ineffective at changing behavior for the long term, remembering that for life part, and that the failure of this intervention largely lies in their lack of attention to theoretical variables. So one thing that I'll mention there is in lay use of theory, it's regarded as sort of a guess. I have a few students that were in my class just this year, and we went over this. So in lay use of theory, it's just a guess, just something that we think might be going on theoretically, we will say. But on the scientific sides of things, a theory is much more than a guess. It is actually a distillation of a lot of knowledge and a lot of evidence that's been collected over a long time to come up with one or two specific things that we think are particularly related to a behavior. And those are the ones that we want to focus on. And also from a scientific perspective, if we focus on just those one or two things, we can get some idea of whether it's effective or not to focus on those two things, which gives us encouragement for the future, but also allows us to check some off the list. Yeah, this doesn't work. Move along. So I'm not going to go on about that, but there will be a theoretical underpinning to what I'm going to be talking about, and I invite the students to play my favorite game, which is sort of spot the theory, what's the theoretical relevance of this. We also know that about 6 months after beginning a program, the majority of people will have regressed back to where they started from and might even be worse. And this is true even in rehabilitation contexts. So Lee, who will be on the panel later, will be telling us about cardiac rehabilitation, but it's true in all rehabilitation settings. We can actually bring people up to quite a high level of performance, and then after the rehabilitation is over, they will decline back, often worse than they were before they started. So people won't do it, so how do we get them to do it? That's the big question. So we're going to talk about changing behavior, we're going to talk about exercise, not surprisingly, but some of the things that I'll talk about would apply to other behaviors as well. What's involved? We're going to start at the beginning. So as soon as we undertake a behavior change, we think for exercise, we'll just pick something that you want and get out there and do it 3 times a week. But there's some other additional questions that we need to ask about the person as they're proceeding. So can you do the exercise? I love T-Rex. T-Rex hates push-ups. T-Rex has a barrier. And T-Rex can't overcome this barrier, and T-Rex has a competence problem, actually. And so he will come back up with us again later, but we want to make sure that whatever it is that we're advising people to do, that there's actually a capability there that they could do whatever it is that we're asking them to. So can we do the exercise itself? That's a critical question. Then how do I get started? So here we are, sage advice. Make exercise part of your routine, like brushing your teeth or taking a shower. Don't even think about doing it, just do it. Closer to reality. I did a 30-minute workout today, 15 minutes of looking for my sneakers, 10 minutes looking for my sweatpants, and 5 minutes on the treadmill. It's funny, but now I'm going to wreck it, right? So the thing is, it's more than just doing the exercise. And if you ask people, and we have a lot of data to show that most people are quite confident that they can do the exercise itself. Can you walk on a treadmill? Sure. That's not the problem. The problem is I can't find my shoes, I can't find my sweatpants, I used them yesterday, now they're dirty, I can't get on that, I forgot to bring my towel to work. All of this stuff around the edges of the physical activity is what we need to pay attention to. It's often not the activity itself that's the problem. And it's these other things that get in the way of people persisting. So this is another example. So my whole routine lasts an hour and a half. 15 minutes of cardio, 15 minutes of weight, and an hour of talking myself into it. So this is another level of factors we need to pay attention to, which is our little friend motivation, so it's a motivational barrier. We do have an example here of a person who it looks like she actually did talk herself into it, but we're going to spend a little bit of time today looking at the things we say to ourselves or that others say to us in that talking ourselves into it part. So we're going to pay a little bit of attention to that. So what behaviors are we changing? It's not just the exercise. We need to support the behavior. We need to get people to the venue. We need to help them find a venue. What can I do? We need them to pay attention to their clothing. We say you can wear anything when we know, lifers I call us, we're the kinds of people that have exercised regularly for life. We know what to do. You have drawers full of old junk that you could put on in a pinch if you had to. The newbies don't have this, so we need to help them out. They can't wear just anything to exercise. You know it will get caught on stuff. It won't be too tight, it'll be too loose, these kinds of things that will cause difficulties as they're going along. And then we have to pay attention to performing the behaviors themselves. So I'll just give you an example. So a long time ago, and there's probably people in the room that remember this, we started a study. It was called Journey into Fitness. And we had a lot of people come in a room, and they were doing nothing, and they were so excited because they were going to start exercising now. And we asked them all, what did you do in a typical week for the last, for life? Nothing. What are you going to do next week? Next week I'm going to walk, and I'm going to run, and I'm going to go swimming, and I'm going to find a gymnastics class. And so we're sitting there going, okay, you've gone from nothing to everything. I know you have no shoes, you have no clothes, you have no memberships, you don't know where these facilities are, you don't know what the hours are. So the poor person is very encouraged and excited, but they're about to slam into a wall, basically. And so this is what we want to pay attention to in terms of supporting the behavior. We also need to pay attention to scheduling the behaviors. How are we going to fit this in? We all fill up our allotted 24 hours. How can we create more time? I was in a little discussion. I was in Norway last week, and a person there was complaining. His boss was right beside him. Well, he says I should be at work more, but I just don't have enough hours in the day. And I said, well, you can create more hours. Just make them all 50 minutes, and then you would have 28 and not 24, and you could be in work for more hours. It's the same idea as daylight savings time. So here's an example of this. So Maxine, I love Maxine. My favorite day of the week to exercise will always be tomorrow. We've heard this before. So here's motivational advice. Your future is created by what you do today, not tomorrow. So this is just a little contrast of what we would tell people, but we know all those other problems. This is going to be building a little bit. Those other problems are in there. I'll do it tomorrow. I can't find my shoes. Oh, I have to start today. So what will we do about that? So I'm going to get into the quality of motivation later, but you can see we start to get a little judgy. So we want to be careful with that. I'm trying to fit 30 minutes of daily exercise into my busy schedule. Today I took 120 15-second walks. This actually isn't a bad strategy, right? From an active living strategy, we're having the active breaks, stand up, go stand at the back if you want to. This isn't an entirely bad strategy. Does it fit into the 150 minutes a week in 10-minute bouts? No, but from an active living strategy, it's not that bad. Could we build on this? Maybe, but the way, it's a cartoon. So the person who's speaking here knows that this really isn't what's intended, but she's trying to fit it in as best she can. So from a theoretical standpoint, we'd say, well, she's almost there. We could probably work with this, and if we, just made her change her shoes, then maybe that would help a little bit. So scheduling and coping. Scheduling is difficult because we all have other important things to do and because we have patterns of behaviors. So we have things that we do every day. How many people were affected by the road closure? So that was a fun scheduling nightmare. But ever being an opportunity to spot the theoretical variables, you can really examine, wait a minute, how patterned is my life? And this is one thing that interrupted me for 1 month that I had to get by, but it was a huge imposition, and it cost, oh, I don't know, maybe up to 30 minutes to an hour a day for most people. So now you're asking other people who are just that busy to stick 30 minutes to an hour a day into something that's replacing something they liked, road, with something they didn't like, having to drive through downtown. And it didn't go very well. So we want to take this kind of a perspective when we're thinking about what are we asking people to do, when we're asking them to increase their activities or switch out activities. So a couple of suggestions: combine exercise with something else. I have a personal rule. I watch TV at home only when I'm on my elliptical, for example, depending on, maybe not every day, but most of the time, just to be, don't want to be dishonest or anything. It's not seen as taking up a slot for a desired necessary activity, so schedule it so it doesn't conflict with some other activities. That can take a little bit of trial and error because we're not always aware of what our deeply patterned behaviors are, and blend it in with something else like active commuting, or you could be really creative. So you see, she's got her hairdryer plugged into the bike, so this is a double one. It's not just combining something, it's the one is energizing the other. So that'd be a great bike to have. Think of the stuff you could plug in there, so that'd be great. We also need to cope with barriers. So there's two kinds of barriers: the motivational, so the woman who is trying to talk herself into it. We typically address those kinds of don't feel like it, have better stuff to do sort of barriers, and physical barriers, which is doing the exercise itself. It feels uncomfortable. So we all know that as soon as you start a new activity, so everybody's moving outside now, and you're remembering, oh, that doesn't feel that comfortable, you probably push through it. This feeling uncomfortable one is something that's really attended to in the current kind of boot camp approach to physical activity. Everybody's aware of that. There's a big trend on this boot camp push through it, back to the old kind of no pain, no gain days. So some examples of that: to keep going, make a 45-minute long playlist. Don't stop until it does. Okay, that's actually not a bad idea. But we're overlaying it again on the experience of people. So I'm just going to keep saying it's not quite as simple as that. So this one's a little bit small, I guess, but it says what exercise equipment should really be called. The treadmill, the swear master, the Nordic trick. That's true, right? That's hard. And personal draining. So even if we do have a good playlist, if we have an individual who's experiencing these behaviors this way, we have to deal with that as well. So just layering on a low motivational slogan or a simple little approach may or may not actually do the trick. Outcome expectations. Surely, if we keep our goals in mind, common strategy, and focus on the outcomes, we will adhere. So here's a sort of an extreme example of that, right? She's pedaling right on the scale, because as she pedals, certainly her weight is going to decrease. Common belief: if I exercise, I'm going to lose weight. Yeah, we know that. So what about outcome expectations? Are they realistic? Are they based on evidence? What level of adherence are we talking about? So if you tell a person, if you exercise regularly, these are some outcomes that you can achieve, we need to be really clear about what we're expecting from that person. And if they do not adhere to the specific level that we have laid out, those outcomes may or may not appear. And then regarding other people, and we're going to be moving into the quality of motivation, and I'm going to be using these words a bit, and I will explain them. Are they controlling, or are they supportive? So is it coming from a place that's external to the person, that we're making them do something for a reason external to themselves, or are we supporting them in achieving their own goals? So here is a motivational poster that I found. It takes 4 weeks for you to see your body changing. It takes 8 weeks for your friends and family. It takes 12 weeks for the rest of the world. Keep going. Now, we've done a number of studies that have lasted from 6 to 12 months. We're doing a 12-month run right now. And we're in about the middle of that, so we don't have a lot of people that are up to the 12 months. And this is our experience. In 4 weeks, people are just getting started. They're still fumbling away with the scheduling, learning the activities, discovering that their shoes give them blisters, stuff like that. After 8 weeks, they're still adjusting, particularly to schedules, and they're starting to have run into a few of the barriers that they will have to cope with that are not related to scheduling, motivational, having other kinds of time commitments, having to work overtime, these sorts of things. And after 12 weeks, that's at 3 months, that is an extremely high dropout point. So at about 3 months, a lot of people give it up. So something's going on at 3 months. We're in the process of trying to figure out exactly what's going on. I have some evidence from some studies that we've completed around that 3-month time what might be going on there, but it's a very high dropout point. Between 6 and 12 months, in 2 of these very longitudinal studies, we have shown very small changes in anything except fitness and strength. But that's great. Fitness and strength is great. But the messages that I'm going to show you do not focus on fitness and strength. They're going to focus on other kinds of outcomes, like you are going to see your body changing, and the rest of the world is going to see your body changing. They probably won't. You probably won't. And there's almost no changes in BMI or any kind of health indicators except for blood pressure. And the thing about blood pressure is we can't feel our blood pressure, we can't notice our blood pressure, so it's not the kind of thing that's necessarily going to give us feedback. So the question I would ask, although this is fine, just keep going, I agree with that, keep going, that's a good message to give people. You're basically lying to them as this isn't going to happen. And I think that that creates disappointment, so we want to be careful about the kinds of messaging that we're giving people. And I forgot to mention at the beginning that this is exactly why I usually bill myself as a demotivational speaker. So back to my journey into fitness, I did spend a lot of time with those people in large groups and small groups saying, really, you're going to do all this stuff next week? Remember, those are the ones that were going to do everything next week who did nothing for the last hundreds of weeks. Really, you're going to do this to lower those expectations, because if the expectations are too high, you're already doing something that's new, don't necessarily like it, not sure, you're expecting all this great stuff, the great stuff doesn't come. Of course, we're setting people up to be unmotivated to continue. It's not what we want. Outcome expectation, more sweat now, less jiggle later. Now, I'm not a sociologist, but you're going to notice some things about these images that might be also not necessarily motivating to the people that we're really trying to talk to with these images. And the people that we're really trying to talk to are not necessarily this person. She might have some other issues, but exercise adherence probably isn't one of them. And again, we're looking at jiggle, right? What is that? But okay, we can go towards that. Is that really the message that we want people to know? So that's an outcome expectation. It's a direct relationship between the exercise and body outcome. Even if you lose a ½ pound a week, you still lose 26 pounds by this time next year. Just keep going. It's not uncommon, ½ pound a week. We hear this a lot. The relationship between exercise and weight loss is actually not that strong. So I think there's plenty of evidence to suggest that exercise alone will not lead to significant weight loss. Many people gain weight as they build muscle mass. And in some of those longitudinal studies that we had one woman, and she did really well, and she was really fit, and she was feeling really good and really glad that she adhered to the whole study. But it was a cycling study, and we had sort of a 2-week follow-up. Everybody could come in and tell us their stories. And she was really upset because her thighs had gotten bigger, more muscular, and now her pants were tight, and she felt really good, and she loved the cycling, and she really enjoyed it, but she hated it that her pants were tight, so she was quitting exercise so that her legs would go back down to the size they were before. So we want to make sure that people understand some of these issues, and then some of the images that I'm showing you, is this necessarily the image that we want to put out there? And that's not my area of research, but it almost screams at you when you look at some of these images. So I'm having a little subtext, and my sociocultural friends can help me with that later. We also tell them it's going to be great. You're going to love it. I'm going to hold myself back from explaining this one. Okay. Here's another one. It's called a workout because it requires work. Without the work, it's simply an easy out. All right? But I think people know this. So this is the cartoon, so the satirists help us. I'm the workout fairy. I'm here to tighten your abs. And see, she has a little wrench there. She's just going to tighten her abs. So I think people know it's not magic. They might be looking for magic and looking for the easiest way to go, but the cartoon tells us they know it's not magic. They know they have to work, so getting a little scoldy about it maybe might not be the best way to go. Anticipated regret. This is an interesting outcome that is emerging in the literature, for those of you that are unaware of it. And it's often used to discourage ill health behaviors. This is where we mostly see it. So things like binge drinking, binge eating, and unprotected sex. So if you think about binge drinking, for instance, which is an issue in certain age groups and in certain countries. So in Britain, the sort of 20 to 30 kind of age group has a binge drinking affinity, shall we say, and they're working against that. So you do see a lot of interventions there based on anticipated regret, that if a person engages in binge drinking, a bunch of bad stuff that they won't like will happen. So what you're trying to discourage a behavior by pointing out the bad things that will happen as a function of it. So starting to use anticipated regret for something like exercise, you'll regret it if you don't do it, twists that around. So it flips that idea of making people think, aware of the negative outcomes that will happen if they do something that's really not that great. So we see a little issue. A year from now, you'll wish you had started today. So again, driving into the quality of some of the things that we're telling people, well, maybe, but now you've taken something positive and kind of made it negative by associating it with a negative outcome if you don't do it, which is different than how anticipated regret is typically used, which is a negative outcome if you do something, which gives you a behavioral alternative. So this is a little slippery problem. I'm not going to comment on these silhouettes, but it says you'll never regret doing it, you'll always regret not doing it. So go do it now. So we do have our little friend, it's really simple, get out there and do it, underlaid in here. And then we also have you're going to regret it if you don't, which is that weird negative twisty place, which makes motivation difficult because it's always easier to get people to move towards something than away something, and it's always difficult to ask them to get rid of a behavior without telling them what they should do instead. So we end up in a weird thought process here. Here's just another one on this theme. Wow, I really regret that workout. No one ever. So that might be true. However, how does that help me get out there on the squash court or get out there on the exercise bike or outside on the bike if it's nice out? It doesn't help us much with that. I like this one. Instead of asking yourself, do you have time to exercise, ask yourself, do you have time to be fat? So we're starting to get into self-judgment, we're starting to get into physical judgments, we're starting to get into a place where we're looking for a physical outcome that may or may not be in our control, is probably not that connected to exercise in a judgy kind of a way. So that's what's out there. So, warning. They told me not to talk too much about theory. Content may not be suitable for all audiences. You're going to be okay? Everything I just talked about just came from this model. Yay, theory. So this is self-efficacy theory. So this is a conceptual model, and all of the things that I just talked about are all the things that a person would have in their head at one time. So this isn't really an unfolding over time. This is a little algorithm that we build in our heads before we decide to do something. So we have ourselves, we have our confidence that we can do the behavior, and then we have all our expectations about what we think that behavior is going to achieve, and all of that together influences whether we're going to do that behavior or not. So I could be thinking, okay, here I am, I need to exercise, I'm pretty confident I could ride my bike, I'm going to go and ride my bike. If I ride my bike far enough, then I'm going to be less jiggly later, based on the things that we've covered already today. Okay, I'm going to do it. So that's how that all works. And what we're going to talk about next is basically over more towards this end when we start to get at the quality of some of those motivations. I've said that a lot of times, so this is self-efficacy theory. So that was just to show that there is a theoretical foundation for those of you in doubt. So Bandura, he's the author of self-efficacy theory. Probably everybody who's heard of a theory would have heard of him. It's basically a judgment of our ability to organize and execute given types of behaviors to achieve an outcome which is a judgment of the likely consequences of the behavior. So achieving that outcome is important, because if we're confident we can do something, that doesn't mean we're going to do it. So we see this a fair amount. People are perfectly confident they can do the exercise. They don't do the exercise because they either don't see that outcome, they don't value that outcome, they think they can get it another way, or other kinds of barriers. It's situation specific, and lots of studies show that higher self-efficacy is related to increased physical activity behavior, but I'm going to go back to what is it that they need to be efficacious for. It's not just walking on the treadmill, it's all that other stuff getting ready to go. So this is my little, I think I can, yay, we're back to the cartoons. So what does exercising regularly mean? We have a focus on doing the exercise itself, which I would call a task focus. There's generally a failure to focus on what else is required. So managing the schedule, coping with barriers, and there are some, for those who are interested, ideas out there like recovery efficacy and lapse efficacy, which is our confidence that after we've had a lapse, we can come back. And there's a need to be context specific. There's some pretty good evidence from my research group and others that if you are confident that you can do exercise in one setting, if you choose a setting, another setting, you basically have to start all over again. It does not transfer well. So if you're in a walking program and then you think in the summer and you're going to go into a fitness center-based program for the winter, you are basically starting over again in terms of equipment, clothing, timing, hours, all of those sorts of things. Just because you've started doesn't mean you can carry on and do just anything that you want. So that's an important thing to know as well. And again, it goes back to that idea, what do I really need to do here? So walkers often have difficulty with fitness center etiquette, for example. Okay, the little engine that obviously couldn't fall off the rails. And where we're moving to, the little engine who could but decided not to. Okay, so some practical implications. Confidence that we can do the task seems to be enough to develop an intention. The day-to-day activities most related with intention translating into behavior. So those scheduling and overcoming the barriers, the day-to-day things, not just the exercise itself. It's not so much the skills we have, but what we think we can do with them in the face of challenges. So that guy looking for his sweatpants and stuff, that couldn't face the challenge. And do people have the necessary skills and other supports to maintain to the behaviors? Go back to the basics. Okay, quality of motivation. So some motivation makes us feel bad. Some things we do because we feel guilty if we don't, shameful if we do something instead. They make us feel weak because we didn't do whatever it was, so we make a personal attribution about that. Oh, I'm not good enough, I couldn't get that done. They make us feel uncommitted to the behavior and unsatisfied because we did it. So anything we do from this kind of a perspective often ends up with, okay, fine, that's done, I can move on with what I want to do now. This is controlled motivation. It's something external to ourselves that drives the behavior. Someone told us to do it. We think we should for some reason. We'll feel bad if we don't, and we can't keep this up. Some motivation makes us feel good. So we feel empowered, we feel happy, we feel autonomous, which is feeling like we had a choice in what we were doing. We feel committed to the activity, we like it, it's important to us, and we feel satisfied because we did it. Oh, I'm glad I did that, I feel good now. This is self-determined motivation. This is something internal or consistent with ourselves that drives the behavior. We want to keep this up. So we liked it, we want to do it again, we want to feel that way again. So we're not doing something to make a bunch of feelings go away, we're doing something because we want to have those feelings and we want them to come back. So a motivation that makes us feel bad, which is controlling, is for have to or should reasons. So whenever we're saying you should do this, I should do this, we all have our little self-talk. That's for Annie. We all have our little self-talk. I should do this, or to avoid guilt or shame, or it's to please others, or it's to achieve outcomes separable from the behavior itself, noting that a lot of these messages that we've seen so far are to achieve something besides the exercise per se. So if I Go back to that outcome example. If I ride my bike to work, then I'll have less jiggle. If I ride my bike to work, I will get to work. Maybe I'll have less environmental impact. Maybe I'll get a little exercise in. Maybe I'll burn a few calories. These are fine, but it's not to get something separable from the behavior itself. And they're always, or pardon me, controlled motives are never for the enjoyment of the activity itself. So here are some messages we can find. You have to earn your body. I want to get healthy. I want to look better. I will eat right. I will exercise. I will earn my body. So the trouble with this, well, there's a few different troubles with this, is it's already your body. Not somebody else's body, it's your body. And so as soon as you do this, you're separating yourself from your physical self, which is yourself. It's what carries you around all the time. You don't exist outside of your physical self. You need it to interface with the world. So to suggest this is a very separated outcome. It's very separated from your essential self, remember? So things that are of value to you, your own personal self, your own identity. Here's another one. What do you hate more, a 30-minute workout or those 30 extra pounds? So I've gone on enough about the relationship between exercise and weight, but the problem with this one is this is hate and hate. Hate and hate. This is avoiding things. We want to be moving toward things. That's what motivation is. We move toward things. In the chasing example, the run for your life, yes, you're moving away from something, but in general, to maintain it for life, you want to be moving toward things. So hate and hate are not really two good options. We should have a like option in there somewhere. This is my favorite one. If it is important to you, you will find a way. If not, you'll find an excuse. So I'm no longer a fitness instructor, but I was for a million years. Back to Dancercise. Anybody remember Dancercise? Yeah, the 7-Up, the Tom Jones. You remember. So, and so I've talked to a lot of instructors, a lot of trainers, and they get that, well, if it was important, they'd show up. Well, it is important, but people have a lot of other important things in their lives as well. And this takes us to a very external kind of judgy place, and it's also a judgment against whatever decision the individual made not to exercise for that day, which might have been because they had to pick their kid up at school, or they had extra work to do, or, there's lots of things that can go in there, and we don't want to go, why didn't you do it? Was that reason as important as exercising itself? So this is taking us to a very external, controlled, if it was important to you, you would do it. And your mothers probably all said to this, maybe your fathers too at some point in your childhood, and can you think back to that for a minute? Well, if it was important to you, you'd have done it. I'm a mother, I can do that. No? No? You don't remember that? It's not good. Okay, if you don't work for it, you probably don't deserve it. I'll just highlight the image one more time. Not going to talk about that. Leave it to my sociology friends. However, if you don't work for it, you probably don't deserve it. We're back to this is your body. What is it that you deserve? So this is pretty prevalent. It's easy to find these things. So motivation that makes us feel good. Flip side. We feel competent. We feel like we can do it. So T-Rex, remember, he couldn't do the push-ups. That's a legitimate competence issue for T-Rex. We all have various competence issues, but we need to do things at which we feel competent. Nobody likes feeling incompetent. We feel connected to others in the environment, so we're all here together. Even if we're not talking to each other, it's a fairly connected environment. We know why we're here. We fit in. We feel good. We feel like we chose to be there, and we value the activity and its outcomes. Exercise is so difficult when you have to and so easy when you want to. So I found a positive one. So this is good, which is where you want to get. You want to get to that want to kind of a place where you don't have to spend an hour talking yourself into it, like one of our earlier examples. Another scary theory. This is for Christina. So this is self-determination theory. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just proving to you that there is a theory, in case you were in doubt. So self-determination theory, in a nutshell, basically there are two main determinants: the satisfaction of the psychological needs. So we have a need to feel competent. We have a need to feel autonomous, like we had a choice in what we do, and we have a need to feel related. And our environments can support those things. You can probably come up with examples for yourself where you don't want to do something because you feel stupid. That's not competent. You don't want to do something because somebody else told you that you had to, so you feel a bit bitter about that, you don't necessarily want to do it. And if you walk into an environment and you don't feel connected to the others in it, like you stand out or you don't know what to do, these are uncomfortable feelings. So we want to make the context we want people to approach inviting in these ways. And these lead to a range of motivational regulations. I'm not going to talk about them all, but they basically, there's our friend extrinsic, doing it for external reasons. And down here is our friend intrinsic, which is doing it for the love of the activity itself. We have some fairly good evidence, largely collected by Phil Wilson, who started with the first T-Rex slide, that exercise requires some motivation, that most exercisers do not love exercise. They don't do it for intrinsic reasons. Most of them do it for identified reasons, meaning they value the activity, they value the outcomes, they feel good about themselves because they did it. It's connected with their sense of identity. And those people will achieve the same kinds of positive outcomes of satisfaction, persistence, and so on as the intrinsic people. So we do not have to tell people, find something that you love. Most of them won't find something that they love. They will find something that they tolerate. It gives them a venue to feel competent, autonomous, related, and pretty good about themselves, and that's good enough. Motivationally, that's good enough. So this can be simplified a little bit more. So when you're in a particular setting, do I feel competent? Do I feel connected? Do I feel like I chose to be here? And then do I feel like the activities are relevant, important, and rewarding? That's it. So if you want to sort of apply this out there, you don't need to know the big scary model. This is a nutshell of the big scary model, and I'm noticing the absence of fun here. It's great if people have fun, but if you go and talk to running groups, the fun usually is not associated with the run itself. It's associated with the chitter-chatter among the people and maybe some of the challenges they had to overcome on their course, that kind of thing, not necessarily the behavior itself. And it's not important that it's about the behavior itself. It's important that they find a way to sustain that behavior for life. Right? So the fun isn't necessarily in the activity per se. This is a happy little group. This I put on there because it reminds me of my Zumba class. So in my Zumba class, which I find hilarious, so everybody feels connected. Has anybody seen Zumba? It's hilarious, right? Because you're like doing all this stuff and you've got all these people and they just love it. It is actually fun. And you're all connected because everybody looks as goofy as you, right? So it creates a fun thing there. And the fun is coming from a connectedness, not necessarily from being good at the behavior. If you do it long enough, going back to dancercise, Zumba's like modern dancercise, right? It's just sort of Cuban choreographed dance as opposed to more jazzy-oriented dance. So, of course, it feels very homey for me in that way, except for I didn't learn the Cuban kind in the first place, so it's a bit of there's a little competent step there. But the longer they stick with it, the more and more and more they fit in. It doesn't get worse. So this is just a little honor to my Zumba class. There's a lady in my Zumba class, she's quite small, and she has the lighting up shoes, so that even makes it better. So, summing up, when behavior change is too demanding, especially exercise, initiates lose their confidence in their ability to organize and execute required behaviors. So being mad at people because they're late, they rush after work, they forgot their shoes, they forgot their shirt, they're hustling around the change room trying to borrow somebody's shirt, this kind of thing. They tried hard to get there, and we have to recognize that organizing and executing all those behaviors, back to the basics, they might retain some confidence for the elemental tasks, but if we keep pushing, I know we all believe in progressive challenge, but if we keep pushing that out of their reach, out of their reach, out of their reach, they never get that sense of competence. They need to have a sense of competence. If they feel like, I can do this. They have trouble scheduling, they might have trouble overcoming some barriers, and what happens is they start to think, well, there must be something easier than this, so they start basically activity sampling in a really random kind of way, but the trouble is they're going to run into the same thing over and over again unless we support them in developing the foundational behaviors. Is that right? Sorry. Yeah, that's right. Okay, sorry about that. When motivation is external and controlled, we're doing things because we think we should. We're doing things other people want us to. We're doing things so that we don't feel guilty if we don't. Behavioral attempts will be weak and short-lived. We can't keep that up. Outcomes of the behavior will be less favorable. We will not feel good about ourselves basically because we did that. We'll have that little bitter, okay, fine, it's over. That's the best we're going to get from that. When motivation is internal and self-determined, we're doing things because we want to, because we chose to, because we believe they are important, and because we feel good about ourselves when we do. So you want to get that feeling back again. Behavioral attempts will be stronger and more likely to endure, and the outcomes of the behavior are more likely to be positive. We'll feel satisfied with it, and it will lead to persistence because you want to feel that again. That's the magic pill. Is there a magic pill? No, there is no magic pill. This was in one of the questions that Dawn sent me that I was supposed to answer in writing, and I didn't, so I thought I'd throw it in here. So you can just write this down. Motivation is like nutrition. You have to take care of it every day. You are not motivated, and then it's all good after that. You have to take care of it every day. Some days will be better than others. There are days when you're going to have to drag yourself out to do whatever it is to do, and this is not exclusive to exercise. You will have experienced this in a variety of other domains. Committed exercisers who believe in the activity, maybe they enjoy it, will get past the bad days or weeks. So there are times when you miss a whole week, maybe a month, maybe it's an injury, maybe it's travel, maybe it's family commitments, maybe it's the holidays and your gym is closed, anything, you'll go back if you're a committed exerciser. So here's the magic slogan. So this is a real magic wand. I started looking up when I was making these slides about magic wands. I wanted a picture of a magic wand. You can find lots of them. You can buy real magic wands. And they say right on them, real magic wand. So that's how you know. So I didn't get a real one. I got that one. So motivation is what gets you started, and habit is what keeps you going. So this is for my colleague Tanya in the back, because motivation, it's true, it does get you started. The definition of motivation is moving towards something. But you have to do it over and over again. It's not like starting something down a hill and it just keeps on rolling. You have to start it over, so you have to get started every time. Habit is what keeps you going. So we would argue, and I'm not going to go on at length about this, but maybe for the panel discussion later, exercise is very unlikely to become a habit. It's unlikely to become a habit because it requires too much conscious involvement. So if you think of behaviors that can become habit, a heavily overlearned behavior for is driving. So you leave, you're in your car, you drive home, you're home. You don't have a really specific memory of having started the car and stepped on the gas, and maybe you don't have that specific of a memory of the whole trip, which would show you are distracted. But an overlearned behavior can get that way. Smoking can get this way. It's tiny little behaviors that we have. Nobody finds themselves all dressed and ready to go on the squash court going, how did this happen? Doesn't happen. So there's a lot of conscious awareness. So exercise cannot probably become that habitual. We can get a pattern of behavior to support it. We can go back to the beginning, those supports. So one of my little strategies is I have exercise shoes everywhere because I get tired of trying to find them and remember them and whatever, so now I just leave them everywhere. So do I have a lot of pairs? Yeah. Would everybody choose to do that? No. But that's what I decided to do because if I have the exercise shoes, I can at least walk. Another thing I personally carry on is sort of extra shirts, because if you decide to walk and then you get sweaty, it's really gross to sit at your desk like that all for the rest of the day. So if you have an extra shirt, that's handy. But this requires figuring out what's available to you in your context and making sure you have those supports available. This is not a habit. This is a support system that facilitates your engagement in the behavior. So what can we do about motivation? We can help people find value in what they're doing. Don't tell them they're going to love it. They're not going to love it, probably. They might, but that's okay. They'll get there on their own. You don't have to help people love things. They do that on their own. You have to help facilitate them to do the things that they love a little less than you would like. I'm sorry, this one's a little bit small. So it just says, do they value the health outcomes? Do they believe in the health outcomes? This is a big issue. Lots of people do not believe that exercise is going to make them healthier. So that's a whole other set of belief systems. Initiates are unlikely to find it enjoyable until they build competence and confidence. So they have to have a lot of tries. We cannot be pulling that progressive effort out from them so they never have that feeling of competence. It's okay for it to get too easy for a while because finally they'll go, yeah, this is pretty easy. I could try something else. Wait for them to get there. Find a link to identity. What do they value? Am I an exerciser? Am I a healthy person? Am I an active person? If I can come from that kind of a place, then I'll make choices that are consistent with that identity. External or intrinsic motives can both be good. So all the people have all the kinds of motivation all the time. You all have the same kind of motivation. Sometimes you do it because you have to. I have to go. Sometimes you do it because you really want to. Sometimes you do it because somebody's saying, oh, come on, let's go, or I'll feel better afterwards. A lot of committed exercisers will say, if I do the exercise, I know I'm going to feel better afterwards, even if I don't feel like it right now. So that is an example of using a more external motive to get us started, but we believe in that longer-term feel better part, which is more internal, that's going to come later. So all the kinds of motivation are necessary. We all have all the kinds of motivation. The key thing is that the main motivation, the fundamental motivation, has to be because I believe in this and it's part of the values that I hold. So that's where it has to sort of sit. So there's lots of things that you do that. I'm sure with those of you with kids, it's like, oh, I have to go pick them up. This doesn't mean you don't like your kids. It doesn't mean you don't value them. It's just a little thing that you had to talk yourself into to go and do that. So we want to pay attention to people don't love everything all the time, and that's okay. Behavior will not last if we don't find internal reasons to persist. It is a journey. There will be good days and bad days, and everybody falls off the rails. Just got to get back up. And I did find one motivational slide that Wendy approved. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. So I would focus on that. You have to start. So just start is often good. That's true for writing papers, too, for all the grad students that are in there. They'll have heard that before, and perhaps different things. That's all I got.
No, we can stay here. We'll have some. Thanks, Wendy. I do have a card for Wendy and a thank you gift. However, because I am slightly disorganized today, I'm going to use it as motivation to come to Calgary, and I'll give it to you in Calgary. So
there's good days and bad days. You do the best you can.
Yeah, and Monday will be a better day.
Yeah.
And I will actually give you the card there.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll meet you there.
So what I'd like to do now is open up the floor to questions. So if you have a particular question based on the presentation, feel free to stand up, come to the mic so people can hear the question, and then Wendy will give a shot at answering that question. Also, if you have maybe a particularly challenging scenario,
sure.
You could maybe ask some advice. And anyone have a question to start? Great.
Hi, I have a question around feedback. So U-Walk would be a good example. And I'm sure there's certificates like it's external feedback, but what's the role of feedback in keeping people with the motivation to exercise?
So feedback works particularly well when a person has a goal, and if the feedback is associated with their actual performance and not judgmental in any kind of way, then that's just information that they can use. So with pedometers, for example, when in studies where we've given out pedometers, people are really heavy users of pedometers for a while till they've pretty much mapped out their little world and where they go and how long it takes them to go that far, then they essentially don't need that much feedback anymore. And people who don't have those mapped out kinds of routes will use pedometers, and they'll look at it usually at a certain point in the day to see how many steps they have, and then they'll note, oh, I'm only at 5,000, I need to get 10,000, and then they'll make an extra effort to do something to get that 5,000. So the key thing about feedback, I would suggest, and I have colleagues in the room that might want to join the discussion, is it has to be informational, it has to be linked to their own behavior, and it has to be non-judgmental. So you want to avoid the that's a good job thing. They can do that for themselves once they have a goal.
Can you come to a mic, please?
Oh. It's
I
a
wasn't
ringer. It's a ringer.
No, it's not. I wasn't motivated to come to the mic, but I was just wondering, is there any research on the Fitbit thing out there in terms of the role of that? Because it sort of seems to match some of what you just described, informational and things like that, and some people seem to love their Fitbit, so I was kind of wondering.
Val, is there? Do you know?
I mean, Val, is there any information on the Fitbit?
I think there's just evaluation of its accuracy that I'm aware of. So one of our grad students did a study looking at how accurate it is for actually tracking movement, particularly stair climbing. So a big difference between things like Fitbits and pedometers is whether they all assess vertical displacement and some horizontal displacement, and some of them also assess vertical displacement, and they tend to be errorful basically on that vertical side, depending on what it is. So the Fitbit is one that's supposed to assess that. And stair climbing, of course, is harder work essentially than walking, and so it's a good thing to track in terms of your total energy expenditure. So as far as I know, there's been one master's thesis that was done on that. It's not published as far as I know, but other than that, it's just more information. So it makes you aware. It might have a little awareness aspect because you're wearing it on your wrist, and then if you check it every day, and people enjoy tracking type behaviors. You plug it in, you get to see what you did. So there's a little bit of fun and enjoyment just in that tracking thing. It's directly related to the behavior. It's not judgmental. It gives you a little feedback, and you can set little goals for yourself and move yourself ahead. But I'm not aware of any research on the motivational effects of them, but I think it would be the same as any other kind of tracking device. I'm happy to have a colleague correct me. Nothing? Come on.
Christina has a question.
So recently there's some new studios that have opened up in Edmonton. One of them I'm thinking of particularly, you need to be overweight or obese to be a member of the studio. What do you think about a studio that serves only that group of people?
Well, I can't speak to what they're doing in the studio, but we do know that some people, well, all kinds of different people, so males, females, people with a chronic disease, people with an acute disease, people with various kinds of movement impairments, like to be in somewhat protected environments where they don't have to worry about social comparison and potentially judgment from other people in the environment. So I would say I think that's fine. If they're happy there, if they're feeling pressured to go there, that's not fine. If they feel excluded from more general population studios, that's not fine. But if they're seeking out a place where they feel related, competent, autonomous, then I think that that's probably a good thing, because we know that different kinds of people, and that's a relatedness thing, that if they're feeling uncomfortable and unconnected to the others in the environment, that's not good. So if we can create that connection, then I would think that's fine.
And that's what I've heard from it, is people feel much more related.
Yeah, so you see that in other kinds of people that have different issues with physicality, that they would rather feel, they'd feel more comfortable in an environment where their kind of physicality is the main kind. Well, I guess that's all there is to know then. Oh, another one. Oh, good.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Joanna.
My question for you is about the Canadian Physical Activity Guidelines. And I know that they're evidence-based and that they say they recommend moderate to vigorous levels of aerobic activity. But what do you think that does to people when light is all they can do? And then they're not really meeting the guidelines, and then you're kind of stuck in this gray area of light is still good, but what do you do with that? Or how do you handle that when it's not working for people?
So the physical activity guidelines were developed by physiologists to achieve health outcomes. And in fact, not even to achieve health outcomes, to lower disease risk. Because there's a certain level of physical activity that epidemiologically is associated with less incidence of disease risk, meaning that across big portions of people, so at a really high population level, when you take those ones in the thousands of people who are exercising at about that level, you start to see what's sort of a watershed in the occurrence of disease risk. And the ones they're basically concerned with are type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and cardiovascular disease. So you start to see that drop off. And then they just identify that level of activity for people to do. So that level of activity isn't necessarily what's best for every single individual. So there's going to be individuals who obviously do far more than that, and there's going to be individuals that do far less than that. And there's other evidence that would show that a physically active lifestyle, meaning not sitting down or lying down all the time, is good, so that you can have these incremental improvements, but what's identified at a population level doesn't always boil down to an individual level. So there'll be lots of people who are exercising 150 minutes a week who still have cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, those kinds of things. So we have to look at the quality of evidence that's being presented to us and the way that evidence was collected. So the guidelines were collected at a population level, meaning most of the people most of the time should kind of try to achieve this, but that's never going to boil down to an individual. So I would say if you have an individual for whom light activity is the best thing or the only thing, then they should do light activity, because any activity is better than no activity. That would be my answer to that.
Thank you.
Hi, Wendy. Just in practice, we use goal setting a lot. So I'm wondering if you could just kind of touch on goal setting and what your thoughts are and how it lines up with motivation.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So goal setting is important. It is a theory that I typically don't work with, but it's embedded a little bit in there. So what are the rules of goal setting? They have to be simple, achievable, short-term, long-term. The long-term ones should build off the short-term ones, and those are your basic characteristics of them. So if we go back to the little discussion we had of the measurement devices, then those are excellent for tracking behavioral level goals. And we get into the quality of goals as well. So a behavioral level goal, I'm going to walk 10,000 steps today, and you can track that with a fancy little gadget. Makes it a little bit extra fun. That's good. And those are a little bit different than outcome goals. So the problem with outcome goals, like weight loss, like improved health, is they're a little bit out of our control because exercise isn't 100% linked to those sorts of things. So I would always encourage behavioral goals because they do help us build our confidence for executing those particular behaviors. And unfortunately, even if a person did set a behavioral goal of exercising a certain amount and they achieved that goal on a really regular basis, they still might not achieve the physical or health goal that they're looking from that. There's even some evidence that with high intensity, the interval training came from this idea from Claude Bouchard's lab that's, I don't know where it is now, it's moving all over the States all the time, but anyway, used to be in Laval, that there's some people who even with high intensity training don't even get a VO2 max, a fitness outcome result from that just because of individual differences, which would be very difficult to the person. But we're all individuals and you just don't know how you're going to respond. So I would encourage behavioral goals and not some kind of a separable outcome goal.
Okay, I just noticed a lot of the social media articles and things like that and posters that you presented are really focused on women, and the pictures are all of women. So do you think there are different techniques that you need to take when dealing with men versus women, and even just to kind of counteract some of the messages that women are getting as far as activity goes?
Yeah, that's a great question, thank you. There were some with men. One of the things when I do these kinds of presentations is I always go and look up, because I try to spice it up with cartoons. This is the first time that I've sort of heavily focused on the media messages that are out there, but I love looking that stuff up. And there were a few with men. The ones with men tend to be worded a little more harshly and include swearing and things like that. So I thought maybe for this audience I wouldn't use those. But they do have the six-pack abs on men, and there are those messages out there. But there is a heavier emphasis on women. So between women and men, there's some fairly good evidence from self-determination theory in particular that women will start and maintain exercise for introjected reasons. Those are the shame and guilt ones. Men won't. So if the men want to do something, they'll do it. If they're feeling, maybe they don't feel as much guilt and shame as women. I don't do that area of research, I don't know. But the women will continue to exercise and report higher levels of shame and guilt reasons than men will. And they are, and this would be a cultural, so I'd need my sociocultural colleagues to help out with this, but there is actually a heavier cultural press on women to look a certain way than there is on men, and they are vulnerable to that. And this is why there is a tremendously large cosmetics industry, cosmetics injury. That was like a cosmetics industry, a plastic surgery industry, Spanx. Men won't wear Spanx. So yes. So women are vulnerable to that. I would think if we're interested in well-being, then we want to probably, I would again focus on behavior, focus on behavioral accomplishments, focus away from those physical accomplishments. Like the woman that rode the bike, she felt great, she felt good, she had more energy, but her thighs were too big, and it was silly, well, buy bigger pants. But no, we don't like to hear that. So, or even just a different, like the boot cut probably would be great for her instead of the skinny jeans. She could do it.
Hi. I have a quick question about the link between identity and motivation. So I work on the health promotion side, and I'm just looking for how we could maybe apply it. So do you find that most people go into something because they want that identity? Like I'm thinking like maybe someone wants to be known as like a CrossFitter, so they start doing it, or is it more a few months down the road they get that identity, like all of a sudden they're a runner and that motivates them because they want to keep that identity?
That's a good question. So that's a little bit of a chicken and egg question, so it's hard. So from self-determination theory perspective, identity and identified motivation has to do with the idea that what you are doing is consistent with your identity and your values. So if I obviously identify as a researcher, it's hard for me to let go of that in lots of situations, and I will respond in a researchy way. Us researchers drive the practitioners crazy because they want to know what to do right now, and we always go, well, I can't really say because, and we have to do a bunch of studies. And so that's one of the sources of tension between researchers. So just for an example, but we kind of can't let go of that. So if you have an exerciser, and I don't know how many people in the room, I'm not going to ask you to put up your hands, but you probably identify as, well, I'm an active person, I'm an exerciser. You might be a little more specific, well, I'm a runner, or I'm a Zumba, or I'm a walker, whatever one of these things are. But somewhere there's a sort of a broader idea there around being physically active and being an exerciser that would also support trying different kinds of activities. So you would try different things out. And if you tried out CrossFit, and we have like a CrossFit devotee in the room here, one of my students, then you might become a CrossFitter because you love it so much, but it would probably be because you connect to that environment, it feels right to you, you can stand behind this, you believe in it, in which case you become a CrossFitter. But there probably are, Eric, you can plug your ears, there probably are people in CrossFit that maybe aren't a CrossFitter, they're just trying it out, doesn't work so well for them, they don't really like this environment too much, they want to go back to their running group. But that's still an active person, and active people will sample activities that way, and they're okay to reject them and go back to another one. It doesn't harm their overall identity. So I would say you want to look for that broad level identity that supports the kinds of activities that they do. From a health promotion standpoint, we don't care what kind of exercise people do. They can do anything they want. We care that they do some kind of exercise and that they feel comfortable there. So bodybuilding, for instance, is not for everybody. But the people that do it love it. They identify with it. They have a community around it. There's lots of really positives, really good positives about that from a health promotion standpoint. I just chose that one because it is a really identifiable community. I'm not judging bodybuilding.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Judith.
I have to introduce the sport word here because I
Oh,
haven't
good.
heard it at all.
Yeah.
Because I am a tennis player and
Yeah.
have been forever. I'm just wondering if involvement in sport isn't motivating, because we haven't heard a lot about that in this room.
Yeah.
And it's not about winning, but a lot of people find sport fun.
Yeah, it's true. So back to the male-female question, men tend to enjoy sports more than they enjoy exercise. It's difficult to get them actually into just exercise for exercise's sake. As a group, speaking globally, they don't see the point of that. They like to have the competitive, the interactiveness of it, and then the game itself and the challenges of the game and the rules and all that kind of thing. Obviously, there's plenty of women that like that too, but there is a little bit of a gender divide on affinity towards sport versus affinity towards exercise. So sport is great. That's showing a little bit of a bias that's emerging from when we start to talk about physical activity and health promotion. It's almost, sport has been hived off, I would suggest, as the sort of a specialized activity level because of its competitiveness, the need to join leagues. It's very restrictive. I know in the tennis world that you are in, it's much more liberal because you're in a club where you can, book your tennis whenever you want and you get your little group when you do that. But for other people, if they wanted to play softball or hockey or something, they would have to go in a league and it would be a little bit more restrictive. And from a public health standpoint, we spend most of our time trying to encourage the people that don't do anything at all, and therefore we tend not to pay a lot of attention to the sport people. However, sport is a very good option. It is really motivating, if you can accept that term. People like it, they have fun doing it, but again, they have a chance to feel competent at it, they get good at their sport. Even in tennis, I'm sure that you would know that some of your companions will use particular shots all the time because that's their favorite shot, because they like doing that shot, or if it's in doubles, they'll only play on this side, not that side, because they feel too uncomfortable. This is spot the theory competence, right? So they feel competent at it, and whether it's competitive or not. Yeah, so I would never discourage sport. I would encourage it. I do research in sport as well, but it is funny how just in the research world we've moved so heavily towards exercise or physical activity, which is the broad umbrella for all kinds of exercise, and away from sport. But yeah, sport's great. I would suggest good option for people.
Hi again.
Hi.
So I have a question about the 3-month mark and what might be causing that. Like I think about my own experiences, and yeah, I can go hard for 3 months and then same thing, wah, wah, wah. And I might feel autonomous related and connected, or no, competent. But for me, sometimes I think it's like a self-sabotage kind of thing. Like, do I deserve to feel good about myself and my body and my life and all that kind of stuff? Like, and I actually have this conversation in my head the night before I'm supposed to get up to go exercise early in the morning, where I kind of keep myself up and I'm like going, I should really just go to bed, because then and I'm very conscious of it playing out. So I'm wondering if self-sabotage kind of falls into these, like kinds of the 3-month thing in particular.
Okay, so a couple of things that we need to be careful of is the kinds of theoretical guidelines that I'm talking about will apply at a population level most of the people most of the time, and they won't necessarily boil down to any specific individual's experience. Self-sabotage, I haven't studied. I have to think for a bit for where I would fit that in a particular theory. I'll lean on self-determination for the moment, and I'll go into introjection, which is shame and guilt land. And I think almost all of us, if you can think of anything that you've had to do for a period of time, it usually involves a prescription, something that you had to do, perhaps because you were ill and you got prescribed whatever this behavior is, or you had to change your diet for a period of time, or you had to live someplace you didn't like because your house was being rent out, or you were moving, or I don't know, anything like this. People can hang on pretty well to what is not an optimal situation for them for about 3 months, then it starts to sort of fall apart, I would suggest. So that's what I think is going on there. And we're not finished with those analyses yet in our one study, but with initiates, by 3 months in Canada, the season's probably changed. You probably have put aside some other things in order to accommodate this behavior, but you actually haven't replaced out any behaviors, so all of those demands are still there. So this is an extra demand that's been in place that's starting to show its effects on other things in your lives. And you get into this, well, should I do this or should I do that? Noting the should, which one should I do? And there's lots of things in our lives that we're going to feel more strongly that should motive about, in addition to other ones. We should take care of our children. I think that that's true, but we also want to. It's just to show that mix of motivation. And when you start to feel like something's drawing you away from something else that's important, that's when you're going to start to have those little discussions. So I would suggest that probably the integration into the lifestyle has failed in that case. That's putting you're having this conflict between these two activities. You got to figure out how to resolve that conflict. Might take therapy, Nancy.
I knew you were going to go there.
She kind of asked for it. I don't really mean it.
Well, I'd like to follow up on that. So is there anything around age and stage? Mm-hmm. So you talk about prescription. People of my generation are very much about following instruction, mm-hmm. right? So a physician saying you have to get active would carry some weight, whereas in another generation, there'd be no value added to that instruction. So Can you talk about the impact of motivation and age and stage?
Okay, so where you were going with that is not where I thought you were going with that. So age and stage is important, and we go through this. So again, going back to, I would regard myself as a lifer. I've exercised my whole life, was an instructor, and there's stuff I can't do now that I could do before, which creates some motivational challenges, because just by virtue of physical changes that are inevitable, even I had to accept that. There's things you can't do, or you can't do the same way, for example. So there is that little issue to get across. In addition to age and stage, there's also some cultural things that we could bring into around people following instructions or not following instructions. But there's also some belief systems in there, and I didn't talk very much about this, about what is appropriate for a person of a certain type with respect to different kinds of behaviors at different life stages. And so we are nearing the end of, so for a long time, older women thought they shouldn't do anything. They just shouldn't. They should sit down now, basically, and not do anything. That is passing us by. It's going away, but there's a little bit of it still there. But that is prominent in some other cultures, actually, about what women can and can't do in particular, or what men can and can't do, and there's age factors in there. So there's multiple factors in there. And to address that, you have to get into the belief systems of the person. Why do you think that? What would happen if you here is this belief system, I'm turned 60, I should sit down now. Well, what if you didn't? How bad would that be? Well, and so can you have that discussion with the person and find out how you could do it? And this might be part of developing. So there's also some fitness centers or activity facilities that cater to women that come from a culture where they have to be covered up all the time, so that they can go in and have a protected session where they can do that, because that helps them get past that barrier that they can't be physically active in public, and they can't comfortably do it in whatever clothing is required. So you can accommodate that, so you can figure out what is the barrier and try to address that. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. It's a bit vague, but every person is going to come with a little set of beliefs that are going to influence what they think is appropriate and what they should or shouldn't do. I would still go back to, if it's a should motive, that might get you started, but you need to move on to a want to kind of a motive, and helping people just over that. The beliefs sometimes influence that to get them to want to. Don't you want to stay healthy? Yes, I do. Well, then you could stay active. Why do you think you have to sit down? Someone told me to. Do you think you have to do that? No, but they told me to. Well, that's should. So you can sometimes talk them through that. So.
One more question?
It's up to you. You're the boss.
I have a question. So I'm a community OT working with people with brain injuries, and I'm pretty sure there are some of you working with people with various disabilities.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking that people with disabilities are such underrepresented population in terms of physical activities.
Yeah.
So I know we have a Stedworth Center that's dedicated to people with disabilities, but sometimes it's very challenging to get them here because of their physical, cognitive, and also psychological barriers. So I'm just wondering, are there any studies in these areas, and what are your advice on this?
So that's another peculiarity, I will say, of the research world, is that we hive off different research that addresses specific populations, and to date, people with physical disabilities and other kinds of disabilities, especially intellectual disabilities, however they were acquired or came from, are hived off into specialized areas of research. We actually just hired a brand new staff member in our faculty that takes a critical look at that situation and is looking at basically the cultural level beliefs that are currently supporting that division in how we address, shall we say, sort of able people who are not necessarily all healthy, I have to point out, versus people who have disability that prevents them from engaging in certain contexts. So I think that's a really, really important question. It's a really huge question. It's a really difficult one if you think about some of the facilities that are available and even how we prepare people to work in facilities. They will create, I think, real, whether they need to be there or not, they're real barriers to persons with disability to coming into certain kinds of facilities because they do not feel like they are equipped to take care of those people. So to an extent that falls back to us, meaning the faculty and the university, to prepare people better to maybe handle a greater diversity in physical ability, and that's quite new thinking because even the Stedworth Center is an isolated little island that takes care of people with physical disability, not other kinds of people. And then other areas in fitness take care of people without physical disability. So it's really quite new that we're starting to look at how can we accommodate these areas together. But it's an important question, and I think if we could all sort of have that in mind, there's lots of people who have functional physical impairments like T-Rex who are going to have trouble with certain activities, but we could probably think up another activity and not just stick with what we know, basically what we know. We could think of something else. So it's not really fair to go, okay, well, T-Rex, you can't exercise because you can't do the push-ups. Too bad, sit over there. And this happens all the time, right? You're in group exercise especially, the instructor will start doing something. I'm going to start a war on jumping jacks soon. Anyway, that would be an example. The instructor starts doing something and half the class stands there. And sort of, okay, back to age and stage. Are you kidding? This is not going to happen. But they just do it anyway, or the really good ones obviously give you a lot of options and they try to accommodate, and that's great. But there's a certain belief system there that suggests that this is a good exercise and we should just all do it, and if you can't do it, then we have to accommodate. But why doesn't it start from, what can we do? And if you can do it, well, here's an option for you. But that's not where we start from. So we start from what we know and go. We don't look at, wait a minute, ground up a little bit, turn it around. So I would suggest there's lots of people with physical impairments that could be accommodated in public exercise facilities, but we don't because we're basically not prepared in our minds to do so. Probably technically, if we have a good degree, we are prepared to make the accommodation, we just aren't used to it and aren't necessarily sure that we should because it's somebody else's domain. So if we cooperated professionally, that would help too. So thank you for that question.
All right. Thanks, Wendy.